Where's that darn karate Jew? They're making us rabbinists look horrible. Shalom and welcome again to another exciting edition of the Torah Watchman Show. LLC, hosted by none other, your humble karate servant, Reb ben-Emmett, appointed rabbi, interim rabbi, community rabbi for Bethesda Synagogue in Uganda. Yes, I'd like to take credit for this, but I cannot. But Elohim used this Jew, this white Caucasian Jew, to reach out to poor and very vulnerable black Jews in Uganda in a way that put Bethesda Synagogue on the map. And I asked him to use a community like a kibbutz, like an Israeli kibbutz. Is that so sweet? Where everyone is lifted up together. So there's no such thing as a weak link in the chain, right? Because we're all either strong together or we're weak together. And this is something in humanity we can learn from, right? Giving charity to those people that have nothing. You think we have challenges in the United States? How would you like to live in a famine situation, in a situation you don't even have dependable clean water, or even power production systems for refrigeration for perishables, like my brothers and sisters in Uganda? About 80 righteous souls there. And Elohim has connected me across the world, like a member of the Rabbis Without Borders. Simply, how Elohim gravitated me to them. Why do you think I care about them so much? It's in my blood too, literally. On my mother's side, I would estimate about my 6th great-grandmother. A lot of people don't even count that. But it's enough in all of my multiple DNA tests as a man of science to find that, prove to me quantitatively through empirical science that I am born ethnically Jewish. And yes, my 6th great-grandmother on my mother's side, the maternal side, did come from Uganda descent. The Bantu area there that goes back to the time of Theodore Herzl. Anyway, I just wanted to share that little story with you before we get started. The title of this Torah Watchman Show edition is none other than our weekly Torah cycle of Parshah. And we're looking today for the Parshah Chayei Sarah, and you'll find that in the book of Genesis, or Bereshit, chapter 23, beginning with verse 1. And we're going to be having a synopsis coverage, not verse by verse, through 25, verse 18. So if you have a Tanakh, or if you're a Noahide, if you have a King James Bible, Christian or whatever, if you have any kind of resource like this, I encourage you for it to be more meaningful to you to follow along with me. And I'm going to break this out in 7 aliyahs because that's the Jewish tradition to do that. Again, for anyone that doesn't know what an aliyah is, and I've been working with Noahides this week, for instance, they aspire to be karate Jews, and I told them the path that begins with embracing the worldview of the karate Jew first from a philosophical point of view. Reading the books of our rich history that goes back to the 9th century is a bridge to knowledge, the bridge to truth that only the Torah can represent to be true. Not the compromises, the 50 shades of gray of oral tradition found in the Talmud by rabbinical authority. Don't want to go there too much. But this Parshah is very sweet. It's actually a love story. It begins kind of sad and then leads up to a very triumphal ending. With life, we have ups and downs, right? And every Jew today is mourning for the 1,400 murdered Jews, mostly civilians, women and children, little babies, were murdered by the Hamas Palestinian monsters on October 7th, 2023. We never thought that this Jewish New Year would bring so much pain and misery to the Jewish people. We said never again in the time of Rabbi Kahan in the 1960s and 1970s, but never again keeps on revisiting us, right? Why do so many Jews have to die to wake us up and be united as a nation? In my experience, I'm getting close to 59, been on this earth more than a half a century. I've never seen Jews worldwide as united as we are today. Now, there's a lot of lost causes in the world, like George Soros, Bernie Sanders, Zuckerberg, Bernie Madoff, all the others, Schumer, in the Senate. We have so many bad players there, and it impugns the righteous reputation of those people that are doing their best to represent the image of Yehovah Alachachim, to be that image and that ambassadorship to the rest of the world. I told someone that at work today. I see myself as the ambassador of Israel before the Gentile world in the United States of America. And if we have a smiling face and we have forgiveness in our hearts, we're actually reflecting that true one image of Elohim, aren't we? So let's get started. A brief synopsis. Sarai suddenly dies. Yeah, she suddenly dies. And Abraham purchased a cave at a place, a Canaanite community back then, about 4,000 years ago, of Machpelah, which is known as Hebron today. Okay, the tomb of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. So he purchased that burial plot within, I'd say, 24 hours after his wife passed away, or maybe within a few hours less than that. It was a natural cave formation, and King Herod the Great I built a huge, magnificent temple-like facility of concrete, Herodian stones there, around this area in Hebron. And unfortunately, Hebron is controlled by the Palestinian administration, because the Israeli government, stupidly, at the time of William Jefferson Clinton, agreed for peace with the Jordanian murderers and butchers of the Jewish people for a fake peace agreement with them, and gave away that holy site of Hebron, gave away many of our holy sites. When Jews try to go there in their pilgrimages and all that, we have to go as guests of the Palestinian administration. We have to ask permission to see a holy site that uniquely belongs to the Jewish people as a eternal treasure to our children. But it's there in Hebron, as in where the story actually is centered upon this evening. Now, with the death of Sarai, and with the death of anyone in the very valley of darkness that King David talked about in the book of Psalms and Tehillim, though in the valley of death we dwell, but we will fear no evil, because Elohim is with us always, right? He's holding our hand, at least he's reaching out to hold our hand, to take us out of those dark places. And better yet, to get over mourning and sitting Shiva for a week, for 60 days, for 11 months, is for your young, handsome man, Isaac, to prepare him a bride of the love of his life for him, and none other, sending him into the land of Mesopotamia, the land of his forefathers, of Terah, and others there, his descendants, and Aram, along the ford of, I'd say, about 4 different rivers running within the heart of modern-day Iraq. I'd say it's probably northern Iraq. If you could put a map and on that, it's been so long ago, and even our archaeologists and the best of rabbi experts that studied this, are not quite sure exactly where that area was, but we know where it's not. So let's include, I'm going to have a map here for you later on in this video of what that area of the land looks like as far as the geography is concerned. Okay? Now, the whole goal of this Parshah is to show you, and actually I say it's dedicated to the life of Sarai. That's what Chayei means. Chai, you think about Eshekhael, and that was Sarai actually was, I say, the very first Eshekhael. She was a righteous mother. She had to wait 90 years. I think she became pregnant, or heard of her pregnancy coming from the angel of the Lord when she was 89, approaching 90. She could not believe it until the child was growing within her. As a woman who is post-menopause, a woman who had a barren womb, her entire existence, but had a loving husband, Abraham, who transformed before her eyes, and she did too, because, Elohim promoted this couple, this, wedding, blissful, in love, best friend couple, Abraham and Sarai, by changing their names. And that is amazing when the divine creator gives you a unique name. From this moment on, you will be known as Abraham. From this moment on, you'll be known as Sarai. And it's wonderful. Now, in the last Parshah, we hear about Abraham and Isaac coming down from Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, which was Salem at that time, a Canaanite Hittite city, controlled by Canaanite kings and soldiers. I suppose an angel of the Lord went with Abraham, even though he's well known in that community of Canaanites as royalty, as someone they knew about his forefathers in Mesopotamia and where he came from. And he was probably considered as a nomad, as a pilgrim, but he was also considered as probably one of the community after living in Canaan for that long. So he returned to Bathsheba, I want to point out as an intro to this Parshah, with his son alive, Isaac, after sacrificing a ram in the thicket that was caught by its horns, that an angel of the Lord gave at the last possible minute to Abraham to sacrifice in place of his son. I want to point out, Christians, you've been listening to this. Elohim finds any kind of human sacrifice an abomination. It says very clearly in Ezekiel 18, chapter 20 and 21, that a righteous man cannot die for the sins of a wicked man. It's that simple. It says it in the good book. It says it in the prophets. It says in the Torah over and over again. To each their own. We're judged uniquely based on their own sins, as witnessed before peers, right? So going into this here is that salvation was found in the least, the least unexpected moment when Abraham felt that he was going to drive that dagger, that kosher root slaughtering knife into the heart of his only begotten son. And I'm not talking about Ishmael, because Ishmael was a mistake. I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend any Muslims or Arabs brethren out there, but Ishmael was a blessing to Abraham more than Sarai. It caused a lot of problems at home. That's why Ishmael left the tent of Abraham at Sarai's request for the second time, because it was causing so much domestic turmoil there. And he left to Egypt, supposedly, to find a wife. He did not come to help his father mourn with the death of Sarai. But let's get to that point. The Torah is not very clear about this because it's probably not very generationally important for the next generation to learn some hidden truth. The Talmud has a lot of imaginative ideas around this. I will not delve in that. I'm sorry. But I will give you my expert opinion, and I will quantify it as such if I ever depart from the Torah study. Now, let's look at this logically. You have Abraham and Isaac returning to Bathsheba. Why I say Bathsheba? Because that's where they left. So you had the origin of the trip to Mount Moriah, and you had the ending destination to Bathsheba. Now, Bathsheba, if you look on the map, was to the west of Hebron, the west of that area, almost in the beginning of the Negev in the southern Israel in the desert. Kind of arid, just south of there, but it's in a temperate zone, fairly fertile ground, a very flourishing and very expensive city to live in Israel today. But, as the drought was continuing among the Canaanites who despised God, who despised righteousness, who despised treating anyone with any kind of kindness or decency, they were all polytheistic. And the writing was on the wall about their destruction that would come in the time of Joshua and King David, when all debts would be settled. But Abraham was a diplomat. He worked out differences with the Canaanites because, his numbers were very far few in between compared to the large armies of the Canaanite nations, even though he demonstrated his prowessness with his general and commander Eliezer. We're going to talk about him shortly too in this story, when he defeated multiple small kingdoms of Canaanites around the Dead Sea in the attempt to rescue Lot. And we don't cover Lot again in this story because I believe Lot remained in the city of Zoar, I believe, of Zor, if I can pronounce it correctly, a Canaanite city, after, he spawned through his daughters, Ammon, and Moab. So we have the players, you have the chess pieces on the chessboard when we're discussing this, what comes next. So you have the family established in Beersheba. We know that Sarah was there waiting in anticipation toward the very last years, if not days of her life there. I'm not sure how much Abraham confided with her, but if he suddenly left like this, left in the middle of the night or early in the morning and left with son, we're going out, the Lord has called us, and she says, where are you going? And how long are you going? I'll be 3 days journey or whatever, he told her. And of course she was worried about that. And she may have been concerned about her health too. Her health may have been failing at that time. It's very stressful to have a child when you're 90 years old. I've never heard of it. But she's also dealt with the stressors of Hagar, dealt with the stressors of the Philistines, Abimelech, and all of this, all the traveling and everything. And I think her life is slowing down quite a bit. She was like a queen. She was the best friend to Abraham. And I believe when he got there, she's probably not doing very well. She may have been in a coma. I don't know, and I don't want to speculate any further. But in the Torah here, for you to understand properly, because I'm not going to go into exacting detail, I'm going to give you a synopsis of each Parshah breakout, 7 aliyahs. They did move their flocks, their sheep, their herd, their cattle. They moved it to the area of Machpelah, in the area of Hebron of the day. And as you know, during a time of continual drought in the land of Canaan, because of their evilness, they had to move flocks to very fertile pastures. Or maybe some areas of Israel it rained more than others, I'm not sure, but he's probably decided to move his tent from Beersheba for various reasons, I'm not sure. Remember, there was a well there, and I believe a date tree there when he actually took ownership of that well back from King Abimelech, who had possessed it at some time. But anyway, he moved toward Hebron and a place named Machpelah, which is a Canaanite community. So you think about Hebron, is far east of Beersheba, and is probably southeast of Jerusalem, if you look at the map correctly. And I'm going to show you exactly where these communities are behind me. Okay? So in the first aliyah, Sarai died at the age of 127. That is a historical note by the author, which is Moshe. And her grieving husband, Abraham, identified a plot immediately in the city of Hebron. So geospatially, he was already in Hebron when his wife died. If you remember, Rachel died suddenly on the road going to today Bethlehem when she was giving birth to Ben-Emmett. It's something very similar to this. Of course, Sarai was not giving birth, but she probably had some health issues. And again, it's not generation important. It's that she had come to the totality of her life of mitzvah, and God was going to take her home. Just how God decided on his time schedule to take home Miriam and Aaron before Moshe, and finally calling Moshe home at 120 years. But Sarai lived an entire life of 127 years, a very rich life. Her life really had truest meaning when she gave birth to Isaac. And she knew that Elohim was not a braggart or a talebearer per se, that God absolutely, when he says something, he means it, and he carries through with all those promises, including blessing the renegade son of Ishmael to make him a great mighty nation that intermarried with Egyptians and became 52 million Arabs or more today in the multiple Arab-controlled, Islamic-controlled caliphates throughout the world, who a big majority of them hate the Jews and want to exterminate the Jewish people. From that one indiscretion that Sarai recommended to Abraham, just think about that. Actions do have consequences. So you have Abraham, Sarai, and Isaac in the community near present-day Hebron. And then she passed away. If you look at that sequentially, that's probably what happened. Maybe the journey brought her to an early death. I don't know. Or maybe she was just ready to die. When Yaakov was a very old man in Goshen, Egypt, and he was ready to say goodbye to his 12 sons, at that time, he was ready to die. He was blind, had a hurt hip, and he was ready to die. And I think Sarai was ready to die because she felt like her life was accomplished. And if that's generation important to you, Nephew, I hope that blesses you, that, she trusted her husband explicitly. Her husband loved her, and she was next of kin. She was probably his niece, and about 11 years or so younger than him, just as my wife is. I'm 11 years older than my wife. And we parallel with these stories with Sarai and Abraham all the time as a joke in our home. But, they were best of friends. They were lovers. They were very kind to one another. They were internally faithful to one another, except for the one small indiscretion with Hagar. But Sarai had fully given herself and accepted God's promise and said, my life is fulfilled and it's time to go home. So this is what happened in Hebron. So immediately when Abraham went there, and maybe Abraham heard about this site, or maybe he when he's passing by on his various journeys to Canaan, maybe he knew about this cave there, the mountainous area. It's actually, I heard, is about 3,000 something feet above sea level in that area, in the mountainous region. So there was to find rocks and rock face and mountainous caverns and things like that was probably not unusual at all. But this was probably a large field here, and it was originally purchased. It was known as Machpelah Field at that time, and it was owned by an individual, and his name is mentioned specifically and needfully in the Torah as the name of Ephron the Hittite. Ephron the Hittite. Why is it necessary to say that? Because he held the deed of the land. He transferred the deed to Abraham, and he claimed that he wanted to give him a gift because he was mourning with Abraham. He knew that Abraham was a chieftain. He heard about his father Terah in Mesopotamia, the land of Chaldeans, and he knew that he was like a dignitary, and he probably had empathy to him. What's interesting, though, and he was a shrewd businessman, of course, Abraham said, no, I will pay you the market price for this field, so give me a price and give me a budget so I can work with my project manager, Eliezer, to do the notary signing and signatures and legality. I'm joking. But it was a parcel of land. Originally, Ephron, again, he wanted to give a gift. You hear about Indian giver, right? But after Abraham insisted in paying full price, he started thinking about his bank account, right? He said, if I give this land, which is worth a lot, if I give this land away, my wife will kill me when I get home. So they concluded at 400 premium silver coin, and back then that was a lot of money. It really was a lot of money. And some of the sages, the rabbis claim, I don't know if it's true, that he actually charged a little bit extra because he knew he could get that extra money from Abraham. And again, Ephron, even though he's mentioned here, there's no indication, he may have been a nice man, but he was a Canaanite, he was a Hittite, he was a polytheistic person, and was probably immoral like the rest of the Canaanites, a shrewd businessman that would do anything to get an extra shekel out of someone in a very vulnerable and tender moment like losing your wife and best friend. The second aliyah, after acquiring the land, I kept, in the desert, and especially in summer, I'm not sure what the seasons were during that time, a corpse begins to decay immediately. and it needs to be prepared. I guess he used traditional spices and frankincense and myrrh and other things like this to prepare the body. I'm just using my imagination. I do not know. But they had to be a way to preserve the body with fragrance and things of this nature. And immediately, wrap it up in a burial shroud and take it to a place for interment. And this was his cavernous place, and Machpelah field that he purchased. And it was a cave there again, a cavernous area, and I believe it's quite deep. And is probably treated over a period of time as catacomb. I like this funny story from Rashi. I'll just say it here. He said this cavernous place is where Adam and Havla were buried. No one has been in the burial area, and no one's inspected the bones of the patriarchs because it's considered sacred. You don't touch, you don't open it. But our Muslim brothers love to go there occasionally and pick fun, and then hurt the Jewish people when they go there to visit, and burn the area too. You hear me? But the Israeli government gives all that power and control to the Palestinian administration, namely the King of Jordan and the Grand Mufti there, not the King of the universe. That's a whole nother discussion, how I feel about that, okay? So Abraham summoned his servant and charged him with the mission of finding a suitable wife now. So we have Sarai who's buried, and I don't know what kind of ceremony they had, or kind of ritual, but in traditional sitting Shiva, you don't do anything for a week at least. And then you kind of let go that mourning process of the next 60 days, 90 days, and then over a period of 11 months, that soul connection attachment is completely gone, because you presume this person died of a righteous reputation, and then its soul is at rest and Sheol, Read in the Talmud, because the rabbis are more concerned about death than living, and they talk a lot about that. In the Torah, we don't talk a lot about death, and I told someone about this, I know how about this today, that we care more about our righteous legacy in life, and that, this is Parshah is dedicated to the entire life of Sarah as far as a memorial for her. In fact, my wife blesses my daughter at each Shabbos evening on Friday in the name of these righteous women like Sarai. Okay? So Abraham, as a turnabout or counterpart here, his mourning is completed. I'm sure Esau missed his mother dearly and had a gaping hole. When I lost my mother in 2017, it was hard for me. She died over a period of 5 years of Alzheimer's. I'm not sure how Esau, when's the last time he saw his mother alive, if he was able to kiss her goodbye, when he left Mount Moriah, when he came back and packed her bags and tore down the tent and went to Hebron. I'm not sure what happened. It's no details other than he was mourning for his mother still when he met his bride, and that's what we're getting here. Now, Abraham was very clear to Eliezer, his general and servant. Many of the sages, rabbis claim that Eliezer was the first choice to pass on the inheritance and his will and fortune and everything transferred to him, but no one has any evidence except that they were close confidants, and he fought brilliantly against the Canaanite kings in order to facilitate the rescue of Lot and his family, back in that previous Parshah. But Abraham made the servant swear. I guess the common symbol of swearing, you put your hand on the hip of the being of the person you're swearing to, put your hand here, and swear to me that you will not allow my son, my only son, my firstborn, my only son that I plan on giving everything, all the blessings that Elohim has given me before I die. Swear to me you will not allow him to marry anyone but a daughter of my family and Aram. And Aram, again, was that area in northern Iraq, the land of the Chaldeans, where essentially Abraham grew up. Okay? That was his family, and that's the only people he truly trusted. Even though they were polytheistic, they were evil, they had unscrupulous businesses practices or whatever. It is, they worship idols, but still he trusted them more than the Canaanites by far. Okay? Because he was actually, uncomfortable probably living with Canaanites all this time. He probably felt more comfortable living in the land of the Philistines. I don't know. So So Eliezer promised, and Eliezer went to the native land of Abraham to seek a wife, the right wife, for the son of Abraham, Isaac. So Isaac remained behind with Abraham and stayed at his tent in the area of Hebron. Okay, as far as I know. Now Eliezer traveled probably by camel. He probably had some soldiers or support personnel. Probably took some gold or silver or something for bartering. Because sometimes when you transfer a dowry of a woman you have not met before, maybe there's a price. Who knows? I mean, sure, he was very prepared for this. But, there's something that really touched me, that Eliezer was a righteous man, because he said that he actually sought out Elohim's wisdom, because there were a lot of girls there were a lot of young women and virgins, and how would you find the right person? So on that long journey, I don't know how, a week or whatever it took to go up there, he started thinking and praying as he went there, Lord God, give me a sign. And what he prayed for success for his mission, Mazel Tov and all of this, he wants to give more than anything else. He wanted to serve his master, Abraham, by giving a righteous, God-fearing servant, a wife, a daughter to Isaac, to be his challah, his kala, his wife. So he would ask a maiden. This is the scenario, the use case. He would ask a maiden that appear at a public place like a well, and again, the well is the center place. It's like the Cracker Barrel or whatever, the restaurant in the United States where you meet together and you talk about life and things like that, the old country store experience. And everyone met at the public well, the watering hole, where you bring your animals there to be watered, and you go and get water for yourself, passerby, business, merchants and other people go to this well. So it was a community meeting place. So he envisioned, he said, Lord God, the first maiden I find at the well that offers me a drink of water. And not only will she offer me a drink of water, she'll also do me the honor of watering my camels as well. A double mitzvah there. She and she alone, if she would do these things, I would know, Lord God, you're with me, and this is the right person, that would not betray my confidence and trust that Abraham has given me, to find a righteous bride for his son. And as soon as he finished the prayer, and you could picture this in your mind, and there have been movies about this, immediately a young, beautiful lady, a maiden, approached and saw Eliezer there, probably tired from a long journey. And I don't know how many hours he waited. He says immediately, I guess that's probably in the space of an hour after he finished praying. This is how God works. Because when a sincere, contrite spirit comes to the Lord God and asks a prayer, and this does not put money in his bank account, does not serve his ego or his id, but serves someone else and totally unselfish, God's angels move, legions of angels to help that person. So she did come and do everything he asked in his prayer, and he knew she was the right person. So upon questioning her and asking about her lineage, and that sealed the deal, she said that she was from the family. Eliezer said, I'm from Abraham. He's my master. He sent me here to seek out a daughter of his family here. And of course, after questioning and inquiring, investigating her and everything else, they've realized that they were very connected, as in surprise. And there was actually Abraham's great niece, Rebecca, family very close. And in Judaism, especially among ultra-Orthodoxy, it has been known they have married their first, second cousins and that kind of thing. And sometimes there's a need to do that kind of thing. But Eliezer was a matchmaker, and he was hoping to doing the right thing. And so far, it looks like angels led his way. Now, there was an individual by the name of Laban. He was her brother, her older brother, more than likely, who represented his father's estate. And nothing is really said about his father here. It's very interesting why the son or why older brother would represent the interests of his sister for marriage arrangements, things like that, instead of the father. But this is how it worked, I guess. Anyway, Laban was very happy to see a friend of the family. Eliezer was not related to them, of course, but he represented Abraham. And when they saw Eliezer, they treated him like he was Abraham. Okay, almost like a diplomat, a very important person. Okay, so they took Eliezer and his camels and everything else he came with, took him back to the home of Laban, and they had a feast. And of course, during that time, I guess sitting at a table, a banquet table, whatever, Eliezer talked about his dream, about his prayer, and how almost like a dream it came true. And then, of course, Rebecca was smiling, and she's all giddy. I don't know how old she was, maybe 14, 16, I'm not sure, a young lady. And it sealed the deal when Laban, representing his father's interest, the older brother of Rebecca, consented to the proposed match. And this is the matchmaker, you know. Ultra-Orthodoxy, we have matchmakers and things like this, and they work with different families and try to find a match that's compatible, interoperable within two different types of families. And sometimes you can work it out, sometimes you don't. But this was ordained to work. So in the fifth Aliyah, Rebecca's family celebrates the engagement like in a big engagement party. And I want to point out in Judaism quickly that being engaged, and my wife and I insisted when we got married, before we got married, we had a Tanaim engagement party celebration. A Tanaim is as almost rigid as a teshuvah. A teshuvah is actually the marriage license, a marriage agreement that finalizes everything. But the engagement Tanaim is an implication that the Katan would no longer look for a young woman, that he's settled with a woman he's actually agreed to marry at a pre-date. You look on the Hebrew calendar, find the right month and date. Hopefully, you know, if the Mashiach does not reveal himself, as he says this language in my Tanaim and my Ketubah, and everything else is very sweet. And it just brings back memory when I read over this story here. So you can picture it, okay? So after the big celebration that evening, I'm sure Eliezer was very tired. Next morning, the servant insisted immediately returning to his master with a maiden hand. You know, what if Laban or his family decided, well, within a week, if he overstayed his welcome, that they broke off the agreement? Or Rebecca decided, I've never met this guy before, why should I go away? But since she was in the family, per se, I'm sure she was not so shy and timid, per se, that she was probably a little bit excited. Because, again, Abraham was a great man, well-known in that community. So they headed back to Hebron, where Abraham had his tent. And again, Sarai just recently passed away at 127 years of age and was buried in Hebron, in that tomb of Machpelah. So there was a lot of consolation. So when they actually came to Hebron, this is when they actually had their wedding. Of course, it says also, and I think about this all the time, that when your mother passes away, you have something very, very, a loss, a very big sense of loss. You know, something torn, you know, this just won't heal. But, you know, it says here that when Rebecca met Isaac, it was, you know, it was love was in the stars. It was meant to be. And that she actually healed his broken heart. And that morning ended at that time of the wedding night, wedding supper, when she actually formally became his wife. And it's a very sweet story. So in the sixth Aliyah, Abraham, strangely enough, and the sages have a lot of opinion about that, Abraham remarried after the death of his wife, and I guess it was several years in the future after his son Isaac had married Rebekah. So they're all staying together, and I'm looking at my notes here. I guess it's still Hebron. He got married to another person. Now, I want to point out, because it's kind of ludicrous, I want to point out what Rashi thinks. He thought that Hagar was the new woman was a new woman introduced who married Abraham toward his later years after the death of Sarai. As you know, that Hagar caused a lot of problems in that marriage between Abraham and Sarai, to the point where Sarai became so angry and so upset, she commanded her own husband, and women don't speak out to their husband like this, get this woman out of my tent, get this woman out of my house, and take her illegitimate son with you. He will not receive the inheritance that the Lord our God has given exclusively to Isaac. So why would Abraham go against his wife's blessed memory and marry the same woman who in the end caused so much distress for his wife who's just recently passed away? It's totally illogical to assume that. I'm sure Rashi meant well, but he was wrong. Again, I found out Rashi is probably more wrong about his opinion, which became actually part of our oral tradition for the rabbinates, and they assumed it to be the truth because Rashi said it. But he did marry a woman. It does not really clearly give her name, except her name essentially meant lovely. And he said Hagar was lovely, therefore this woman was Hagar. No, I don't believe this. Okay, that's my opinion, personal opinion, based on my experience and research, that this woman that he married was not Hagar. But Abraham had several children, and his children had some names, but they were given some token gifts, but none of them received the inheritance given to Isaac. And none of these children, their descendants, were really talked about ever again. The thing is, the reason why this is mentioned explicitly, in the Torah, it's the same reason that mentioned that Moshe probably married again after the death of his first wife, okay? And there's still some ideas about that. It's not unusual because Abraham probably was lonely. He lost his best friend. He just witnessed the beautiful wedding celebration of his only son with Rebecca, his dream bride, and he probably wanted the same thing. And maybe Isaac, was playing matchmaker like Eliezer did with him and Rebecca to try to find someone. More than likely, this was probably a maid or a concubine or someone else, someone that was going along with the tribe of Abraham in his camp and his travels that he met, or maybe he met her at a town or whatever. But Abraham was very clear that to Isaac, do not marry a Canaanite. So I'm guessing, and this idea has occurred to me, and you let me know what you think about it, and before I close this Parshah. In the caravan that returned with Eliezer, more than likely Rebecca had one or more maidservants with her. Maybe one of these women is the woman that Abraham settled on in his last years of life to be his wife. But Abraham died at the rich age of 175. And he was buried by Isaac and Ishmael in the cave of Machpelah beside his wife Sarai. Very interesting. Ishmael heard about the death of his, I guess you should say, his father. And probably through a messenger, communique, whatever, maybe Eliezer went and found Ishmael and sent a messenger, carry a pigeon or a signal flare, I don't know, notified him that you may want to come because, your father Abraham passed away. So there was a deep mourning area, in Hebron, again, when Abraham was interred with his wife. Now, he went to that tomb. His body was interred in the tomb with Sarai, and it was sealed. Now, his second wife he married is nothing said about her at all. But it's interesting, Ishmael and Isaac, after all these years, maybe patched up their misgivings or jealousy or competitiveness or whatever, and need to just show respect for the blessed memory of Abraham. The greatest of all prophets next to Moshe, the greatest of all Nohites, and just the pillar of humanity was Abraham and Sarai, and how they completely said no to the world, had a paradigm and world philosophical belief system that's completely radically changed, and became the father of many nations. If that can be said, that Sarai became the mother of many nations too, through Isaac. I'll give her that. And the seventh aliyah, simply we have the progeny of Ishmael and his descendants and his relations and things of that nature. Just give you a plug for a future Parshah. His daughters eventually married Esau, which was Yaakov's twin brother in the future. Okay? Ishmael passed away at the age of 137. So when I look at this, and the age was pretty much set after the flood in time of Noah. If you live 120 years or more, that's a pretty good thing. And probably the Lord had some use of Ishmael because he was building a nation within Ishmael to be able to be an adversarial environment in the future to test Yaakov, Israel in the future. Well, I hope you enjoyed this Parsha. I hope you learned something about this. I love love stories, and I love dramas and things of this nature. This is so eloquently written, and it comes from the hands of the Lord our God. How can anyone else just make up this kind of story? Because, you have a story here that's believable. It's imperfect, right? So there's a lot of dichotomy of truths here, a lot of personal interaction with different individuals. And you see how discovery moments of this nature. And then you have historical milestone things that are connected to the story. Like Hebron is a real community. It's a Palestinian city, but it's also one of the 5 holy sites in Israel. And it's there today. The tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs is there today. And I plan on seeing it maybe next year, if I'm so lucky. Well, Rev Yara ben-Emmett signing out. Please share the knowledge of wealth and truth. If anyone's willing to hear it, like I always say, there's a lot of resistant people. There's a lot of evil people. Most of these anti-Semites folks are completely ignorant of the knowledge of God, that God loves him, and only is one true God of the universe and no other. And he does not share his glory with anyone. And God is not a man. He's not a son of a man. He's your only Yeshua, your only Savior. There's a lot going on in Israel today. There's a lot I wish I could say, but I just won't. I don't want to go all that negativity. There's a lot of anti-Semitism in America. And I would like to give you one idea when I close here. I downloaded a PDF, I think, of all the children that are considered as hostages in Israel today. What I plan on doing, I ordered a sign. I'm going to put it out in my front of my door. When people come in, they'll see a sign. And each week, I'm going to have a different picture of someone who is a hostage from this PDF file. And I'm going to make this PDF file available to you if you'd like to download it. But anyway, in America, I feel like I have to do something. I feel like my hands are tied. I feel anguish in my soul. We've lost so many reservists, violent, just courageous soldiers in the IDF that lost them. They've given their life for the country. I've seen so much unity in Israel. It's such a blessing. I see Satmars for the first time recognizing Israel has the right to exist. And they recognize true evil among Hamas Palestinian barbarians too. And they actually given up their sons to the IDF to serve, encourage them. You hear it from ultra-Orthodox too. And from all places, you hear from Lieberman, who essentially is an atheist, and he hates the Torah Synod DMKs and all the Orthodox stuff. He doesn't believe any of it. He may be an agnostic. He's a Jew. He's a Soviet-era Jew. But he is actually admonishing some of the liberals and admonishing the U.S. and other countries, the UN, saying, well, we need to give a Mahmoud Abbas the right to rule over the Palestinians in the future of a Gaza Strip after Hamas is booted out. He said that's completely insane to say that. Now, he's in unity with Bibi. Bibi is in unity with Bennett. Even Gantz, the Blue and Right Party, big liberal progressive guy, who was heading all these protests in Tel Aviv, remember, against judicial reform, and tried to oust Bibi as a duly elected prime minister there from the will of the people. You don't hear about these protests anymore, probably because people are hiding in their bomb shelters. But I'm saying Jews all over the world, they're not allowing politics to get in the way of their love for one another. They're not allowing politics to get in the way of mourning together. Everyone has lost someone in Israel. I have a very beloved friend whose nephew who was a reservist, died, in this conflict. And everyone knows someone who passed away. It's so real to me because we're dealing with the Holocaust, and the generations X or whatever you say, the new generation out here that's still living in the basement of their parents playing PlayStation. They're actually at firsthand seeing the barbarism of the so-called victim Palestinians, and they understand what a Holocaust is really all about. War is really unfair, and civilians die all the time, and America's gotten involved in a lot of wars, and a lot of casualties and civilians have occurred, unfortunately. We have 400,000 soldiers in Arlington Cemetery, 2,500 soldiers who are Jewish, some of them are Kohen, and some of them are rabbis, and we have Veterans Day coming this weekend. That's why I mention this. And people are dealing, not just Jews, but Christians and Gentiles too, they're dealing with the brutality of what Hamas has done to other human beings. That you don't think it's possible that someone could be more evil than Hitler, than the butchers in Gaza Strip, the commandos, the soldiers there who are funded by the mullahs in Iran that want to destroy every Jew on the planet. Now, that could fill your heart with negativity. It could make you very angry, and it's taken away my sleep. But, we have to, at some point, allow God to settle the muddy details here. God has already judged these people. I'm waiting to see God, what he does to these people for their sin. God says he will protect Yaakov, that he would always be with the servant of Israel, that he would protect the remnant, that he would preserve the Davidic bloodline. We talk about the priests of Zadok and everything else, and talking about the red heifer and all the preparation for the third temple. God is not done with the nation of Israel yet. And God has given Israel the ability to fight for itself and fight its own wars. And I don't want to see anyone else die. I have no joy in seeing death rates of Palestinian civilians dying, even though they have very little sympathy on dead Jews. But just because someone treats us despitefully and evilly doesn't mean that we treat them. We should pray for peace with our brothers and sisters, whether Jew or Gentile or Arab or Egyptian or indifferent. That's all I can say. Well, shalom alaikum to you. Salam to any Muslims out there, people. There are many, many Palestinians in America that don't believe in the Hamas worldview. There are many Arabs who are Muslim. 15% of all Islam are Arabs. You would think that number is greater, but not. These 15% are the moderate ones. The others are the more radical ones. I'm saying there's light at the end of the tunnel, because do not demonize a whole group of people, a whole race or creed of people, or a religion of people for the actions of a few. But please watch your back, take care of yourself, lock your doors, talk to your neighbors, don't advertise when you're away from your home, change your path up and your route and everything else. Yes, I'm a soldier, I know this. Security first, protect your families. Some people say don't advertise your sense of being Jewish to other people because you make yourself a target. But I'd rather know who hates me than hiding my sense of Jewishness in this country, feeling protected, where my brothers and sisters of Israel are fighting for their life, and my brothers and sisters had paid for their life for being too Jewish, the estimation of the Nazis there. I cannot stop being this to the world, because I am the ambassador of Israel, and I'm the liaison of Elohim to people, to let them know that God has forgiven them, he wants to forgive them, and he loves them. So I wish you peace. Take care. God bless you. Until the next time. Rabbi Ben-Emmett signing out.